She could either shoot through the heart when it was flat against her, or if it was held sideways, she could split the card in two, which is a pretty amazing shot. Occasionally she'd miss a shot on purpose, and then she'd kind of pout, and this was part of the act, because she could always hit the target. She was somebody who never missed.
I think it's an innate skill. She said, you know, nobody ever taught me to shoot. I think it was just, a love of a gun was just born in me.
It was an instinct and a skill and an ability that only persons who have phenomenal vision, have a wonderful sense of timing, who have hand-to-eye coordination, who have good balance, and who are really very athletic, because a really good shot has to be a really good athlete.
Once Annie's act started getting rave reviews, Cody moved her up the bill right after the opening procession. That season, 150,000 people in 40 cities across America saw something entirely new. A woman who could shoot as well as any man while conveying a youthful innocence that, whether Annie realized it or not, was sexy. It was the stuff of stardom.
She was this really remarkable shot. But what makes her especially interesting is that she was able to combine that with an image, with a kind of a vision of American womanhood that was provocative, but that many people felt comfortable with.
I think what makes her unusual is the fact that she could project a kind of demure, ladylike, often almost a little girl persona, and at the same time be very sexual, very attractive physically.
Annie Oakley's celebrity grew when the Wild West spent the summer of 1886 in an arena on Staten Island. 500,000 people sailed past the new Statue of Liberty, then rode on special trains straight to the Wild West. It was the most popular attraction ever seen in New York, and Annie was now becoming as famous as Buffalo Bill himself. Frank became Annie's press agent, playing on the deep fascination Easterners had with the Old West. He advertised his Ohio-born wife as the girl of the Western Plains. And he never tired of telling the story of the night Chief Sitting Bull, the old Sioux warrior, asked if he could adopt Annie after watching her shoot the ace of hearts out of a card at 30 paces.
When Sitting Bull first saw she had these amazing abilities, to handle a rifle and her keen eyesight, then obviously she had some endowed power of some sort that he recognized immediately. When Indian people look at such individuals that have been empowered like that, then we have the greatest respect.
Sitting Bull christened his new daughter, Watanya Cecilia, Little Sure Shot. For a time, he toured with Annie in Buffalo Bill's show, but the great chief soon left, saying he had grown sick of the noises and multitudes of men. When Buffalo Bill's Wild West opened in Madison Square Garden in the fall of 1886, Little Sure Shot became the darling of Manhattan. She performed before 6,000 people, many in evening dress. The mistreated, half-starved little girl from Ohio had become an icon of the American West.
There was probably never a woman in the history of the United States who was better equipped to take up the challenge of creating a legend, of creating a myth of the Western woman, and then embodying that myth with the kind of ladylike demeanor that would make her acceptable. It is a remarkable creation in American legend.
In March 1887, Cody's Wild West troupe sailed from New York Harbor, bound for London, to perform at Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee. Their ship was a veritable Noah's Ark. The hold was packed with horses, buffalo, elk, and mules. Dozens of Native Americans huddled together, bracing for the first ocean voyage of their lives. And clustered in the bow were Buffalo Bill, Annie, and Frank. But also Cody's new discovery, 15-year-old Lillian Smith, a sharpshooting sensation from California.
Lillian Smith was an expert with a rifle, so much so that Cody himself had said he would pay $10,000 to anybody who beat Lillian Smith at rifle shooting.
Even before they reached London, Lillian had been bragging. "Now that I'm with the Wild West," she declared, "Annie Oakley is done for."
Lillian Smith tended to speak very coarsely, and she was kind of rakish. She liked to hang around with the cowboys. And she had this bodice that said champion rifle shot of the world.
This was not what Annie Oakley wanted to see, just as her own star was on the rise.
Lillian Smith really shows how competitive Annie is. She's worried because Lillian's 15 years old, Annie is 26 now. Suddenly, when you start reading the press releases, Annie becomes younger than she has been. She now starts telling people she's born in 1866. Now she's 20 and she can compete a little easier with this new girl in the Wild West show. She's practical, she does what she needs to survive.
On May 9th, 1887, when the Wild West show opened in London, Oakley and Smith were given equal billing. 10,000 eager spectators clamored to get in. The crush and fight and struggle to reach the gates was something terrific, reported the London Evening News. In attendance were leading British intellectuals such as playwright Oscar Wilde and many of the crowned heads of Europe.
The English were fascinated by America as a place where you could escape the traps of the modern industrial world. They saw America as a place of wide open spaces, a place of the free individual in the wilderness. And I think Cody's Wild West show and Annie Oakley herself spoke to that mixed appeal of America to the English.
Annie particularly was a figure that Europeans welcomed because on the one hand she represented the wild Western girl, that image that she had so carefully created and cultivated. But at the same time, she was a Victorian woman who was there, after all, to meet the woman who created the Victorian era.
In June, Queen Victoria herself came out to watch the show. After the performance, Her Majesty beckoned Annie and Lillian to approach the royal box. Lillian seized the moment, showing off her Winchester repeating rifle to the Queen, much to Annie's chagrin.
So Annie has some very severe competition, and it's not really with somebody that she respects. Annie says, oh, Lillian, her ample figure, her poor grammar, people would see the truth of her eventually. It shows just how much dislike there was between them.
The most important shooting event in England was the annual rifle competition at Wimbledon, and the big-name American shooters were invited to compete. Lillian Smith was the first to arrive. She shot poorly and left in a huff. The next day, Annie Oakley appeared.
Annie does great, and she does it with a rifle. And Lillian's supposed to be the rifle expert. Annie's the shotgun shooter. So she has upstaged Lillian Smith, kind of beaten her at her own game. Annie becomes the toast of London. Some papers even said she was more popular than Cody.
Buffalo Bill never showed up at Wimbledon. The gallant colonel, a London newspaper wrote, was not the champion of his own show. Another paper compared his marksmanship unfavorably with Annie's. Relations between Annie and Buffalo Bill became strained, even as the rivalry between Annie and Lillian heated up. A friend of Lillian's published a letter in a major American sporting periodical claiming that Smith was the toast of London, while Annie Oakley had been forgotten.
And it's not true, but you can imagine how Annie must feel about this. There's a huge rift behind the scenes in the Wild West, and the press gets a hold of this.
Frank Butler and Nate Salisbury responded with letters of their own, defending Annie's reputation. Buffalo Bill Cody said nothing at all.